Hi, hello. How are you? Welcome back. Sunday, Bloody Sunday, the week 11 version. It's the show you didn't know you needed until you had it. We sit here on the ESPN College Football YouTube channel each and every Sunday morning over a Bloody Mary to discuss all the goings-ons from a college football Saturday. We yell at each other, we laugh at each other, we cry at each other because that's what college football is all about. And what better way to do it than with a Bloody Mary in hand? It was one of those nights last night. I've already had one of them. Actually, there's a little bit of it left. It's a 3 slice of bacon morning in the Bloody Mary. Got some pepperoncinis in there. So it's been one of those on a Saturday where now we can point to two conference championship games of note that we can put on the books. Got the SEC championship, LSU, Georgia set. Fifth time those programs have played in the SEC championship game. What a remarkable job. I was saying this yesterday on TV, and, it got some attention last week because of the 2-point conversion that LSU was able to beat Alabama. I think a lot of that shine in Baton Rouge probably would have come off a little bit had they gone on the road against an Arkansas team that's struggling and lost, but Vegas said it was going to be close, so there's no reason to think that it wasn't. But what Brian Kelly has done in year one at LSU, when you really look across the country, we've talked about it a lot on College Football Final just because it's a fun story. What Jim Mora Jr. has done at UConn. He's got them bowl eligible for the first time since 2015. Sonny Dykes, undefeated, TCU, probably the runaway candidate for Coach of the Year. I'm just talking Coach of the Year candidates. But after week one, think about this for a second now. Week one, LSU had to come back, extra point blocked. They lose to Florida State. Day after that, Labor Day weekend, skies falling in Baton Rouge. Why did we hire this Northerner? Why is Brian Kelly here? How do you lose to Florida State? Blah, 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 blah. The job that he's done at LSU, think about this for just 1 second. The first team to clinch a spot in the SEC championship game this year wasn't Alabama, wasn't Texas A&M. Texas A&M's not even going to a bowl game. It wasn't Georgia. It wasn't Tennessee. It was LSU. With Brian Kelly, first-year head coach, program depleted with transfers. They bring in Jaden Daniels from Arizona State. They looked sloppy the first month of the season. They got their doors beat in by Tennessee. But then they beat Alabama. They beat Ole Miss. And it's LSU who is representing the SEC West in the SEC championship game against Georgia, who took care of their business against Mississippi State. It appears to be a runaway train of dominance again. But in all these stories around the country, let it just kind of sit back for a minute and realize how good Brian Kelly has been. And so cheers to LSU. Cheers to Brian Kelly and the Bayou Bengals for getting back to the SEC championship game. I don't think anyone had this on their radar, especially with the team that Nick Saban was bringing back. Bryce Young, Heisman Trophy winner. Will Anderson, best defender in all of college football. Jahmyr Gibbs comes in from Georgia Tech. I mean, they had a loaded roster of talent, and it's LSU who is representing the SEC West in the SEC championship game. Another championship game that's set, and I'm excited for this one. Clemson, North Carolina in the ACC championship game. Clemson took care of business against Louisville yesterday. They win the Atlantic. North Carolina, again, in a shootout with Wake Forest. They represent the Coastal. And there's something about North Carolina. I know everybody focuses on Clemson as they should. The Dabo Swinney era into the college football playoff era has been one of the best programs in the country. But I called North Carolina's first game of the season. It was week 0. They were taking on Florida A&M. I mean, this seems like forever ago. This is back in August. And there was the story about FAMU was going to protest and not come on the flight and actually play the games. There's some players that weren't cleared to the clearance. It was a whole mess, but they ended up working it out. And I bring this up because I had the honor of calling North Carolina's first game of the season, which was also Drake May's first ever collegiate start. The redshirt freshman or sophomore. I forget what year he is. But it's his first year. What is he? Is there a sophomore? Either way, neither here nor there. First year as a starting quarterback in North Carolina. And I remember sitting in those meetings with Mac Brown and their offensive coordinator, Phil Longo. And by all accounts, the competition was pretty head up between him and Criswell, who had already been there, and that it took to the very end for Drake to get named the starting quarterback. And upon further review, we were sitting there in these meetings like, well, it was close because the competition in practice, but it was clear that Drake was the guy. Like Drake is going to be our starting quarterback. And so I said, well, what's this guy's ceiling? And they're like, he could be good. He can be really, really good. He's got a lively arm. He's smart. He gets it. It's going to take some time for him to kind of elevate himself to that next level, but we believe that he's going to be a good quarterback for us. Now, the storyline with North Carolina coming into the season, who's going to replace Sam Howell? How good can this offense be? Drake May, in my opinion, should be the front runner for the Heisman Trophy now. Between him, Hendon Hooker took a step back, obviously, last week with Georgia. You mentioned Bryce Young. That's not going to happen for Bryce. Bijan Robinson, he's fallen off. Look at Drake May. Bo Nix, he loses. We'll get to that in a minute to Washington. Drake May, to me, is one of the best stories in college football. And by the way, with the way that they can score, the defense isn't great. We saw it in another shootout again with Wake Forest, but the way that they played yesterday defensively is enough, I believe, to hang with Clemson because Clemson's offense is either there or they're not. Keep an eye on the ACC championship game now that that's set between Clemson and North Carolina, and one of the better quarterback prospects we've seen in quite some time. And just because I know the NFL guys, I know how they salivate over quarterbacks, give it, 5 weeks before Drake May will now be the number one prospect going into the following year's draft. He's not eligible yet. This is only his second year out of high school. He'll be back in college football next year. But watch the Drake May train just take off at this point. And I'm really excited for that conference championship game. There's so many good sidebars in that one. We know the SEC, Georgia's going to be heavily favored, and they should. I don't know that much drama will come out of that one, but watch North Carolina and Clemson. Cheers to Drake May and Mac Brown in what looks to be a rebuilding year because it was life after Sam Howell. They're better than they were last year. It's not even close. So ACC and SEC championship is set. I had mentioned the Pac-12. I mean, this is why the Pac-12 can't have nice things. The Pac-12 going into Saturday, the ranked teams that they had in the college football playoff rankings, they had quite a few of them from top to bottom. When you look at Oregon, they were 6. They were the highest ranked one. Washington was in there. That's 2. Utah's in there. That's 3. UCLA's in there. That's 4. USC's in there. That's 5. So they had an opportunity between those teams to realistically have a shot at the college football playoff. Oregon, the one loss that everybody keeps bringing up until yesterday, was Georgia with Bo Nix and Dan Lanning, and that team had found a way to get back in to the playoff picture. One problem. Washington, since their loss to Arizona State, had also started to hit their rhythm and be a team that you would have to contend with. But in no way did I think even then that Michael Penix, Kalen DeBoer, another good story developing out there in Seattle, was going to be able to go to Alton Stadium and take out Oregon, Bo Nix, and what they've been doing all year. That, to me, was one of the biggest surprises up until the Arizona game. We'll get to that in a minute. But Washington beats Oregon 37-34. Oregon, done. Playoff hopes, done. Pac-12 championship hopes, not done because that's their first loss in conference. Remember, they lost to Georgia at a conference, so they've got 2 losses. But in the afternoon, Oregon bounced. No longer a playoff conversation. Then you go to the Pac-12 after dark at 10:30 Eastern, up till about 2 a.m. watching this one, and you watch Arizona take out Chip Kelly, UCLA. So what has happened? Oregon playoff hopes out. UCLA playoff hopes out. Now you've got to rely on USC, who hasn't looked great. They've looked good. But now you've got to rely on USC to win out, maybe get a win over Utah, figuring out how those Pac-12 standings are going to go. And so in one night, it looks as if the Pac-12 is out of the college football playoff. All that does is bring Tennessee back into the fold, who put up 724 yards of offense, school record against Missouri after losing to Georgia. Tennessee can now hang out there in the college football playoff discussion. Ohio State and Michigan are going to play each other. Ultimately, I don't believe the loser of that game is going to have enough of a resume to be in the college football playoff discussion. But now even a one-loss TCU, let's just say TCU, who beat Texas yesterday, and Sonny Dykes and that team continues to be one of the better stories. Let's say TCU, they're in the Big 12 championship, by the way. Check. Kansas State right now near the top of the Big 12. They look like they could be the other representative. Let's just say for whatever reason, TCU got clipped in the Big 12 championship. Because of what's going on in the Pac-12, you are now going to look at potentially, because a 3-loss Kansas State team and a Big 12 champion wouldn't get in. It wouldn't happen. So if Georgia wins the SEC, if USC, 1-loss USC wins the SEC, let's just say Utah, a 2-loss team, wins the Pac-12, there are so many other variables out there now to where you're probably going to be looking at a non-conference champion having a really good chance to occupy that 4th spot, because we believe, look, the winner of Ohio State and Michigan is not going to lose to anybody in the Big Ten West. Big Ten in. Georgia in. Big 12 TCU right now, they look good in. But you got to remember, 2 of the 4 spots in the college football playoff rankings are occupied by Michigan and Ohio State, and that's going to settle itself. And so there are a number of fascinating scenarios going into championship weekend 2 weeks from now. And I just don't think that's going to include the Pac-12, which is a shame because they haven't been to the playoff in a while. They haven't been to the playoff since, I believe, when Washington was in there and they got bounced early. Oregon was in there at the beginning with Marcus Mariota, but it just continues to be one of those things the Pac-12 can't figure it out. And that was a bad day for the league with 2 of their playoff contenders getting bounced in games where they shouldn't have been bounced. In fact, they were double-digit favorites and they ended up losing. So that's the Pac-12. The Big 12 continues to be the Sonny Dykes story. There was a good undercard in that one with Gary Patterson, spent 21 years at TCU as the head coach, built them into a national power. He was let go last year. He's a defensive analyst for Texas. Seeing him in burnt orange is still crazy to me. But you see him on the other sideline facing his former team and their new head coach who's got them 10-0 for the first time since 2010. And I'm one that believes new blood in the college football playoff is a great thing for the sport. And new blood in TCU would be so fun to watch. I hope that they continue to win, and I hope they get their opportunity. Because every year, what do we say going in? Ohio State, Clemson, Alabama, Georgia, Oklahoma was up there for a while. They're 5-5, and they're a mess. But no Alabama this year. No Clemson. I mean, there's an really outside shot, the winner of the ACC, and it was Clemson could get in. But the new blood's there. And it's good for the sport when we can take a TCU and get them in the conversation, even a Tennessee, get them in the conversation. There's a lot to like about what is going on with TCU in the Big 12. They've got a schedule in front of them. I'm going to pull up their schedule for you guys real quick just to see what their odds are of going undefeated the rest of the way. 17-10 over Texas yesterday. So TCU the rest of the way. They have Baylor. Baylor's kind of an enigma. They lose yesterday to Kansas State to fall to 6-4. And then Iowa State's 4-6. So you look at TCU's schedule, it's winnable to go 12-0. And when you look at the Big 12 standings right now, like I said, right now, if it was to be played today, Big 12 championship would be TCU and Kansas State. We're not supposed to cheer for anybody. It's just not at ESPN when you're in college football. But let's all agree for each other, cheers, that we're going to root for new blood in the college football playoff. Give me an opportunity to see TCU Tennessee play. Could you imagine the point total in Tennessee TCU if they got into the college football playoff? So that's a little undercard story. We're going to keep watching the rest of the way because I really do believe that the schedule sets up for TCU to have an opportunity to go undefeated and then find themselves square in the mix and in the college football playoff. We talked about the SEC championship. That's going to be fun. A couple of other storylines I want to get to here on this Sunday Bloody Sunday before we let you go. Great story. Oh, yeah, that's it. That's the one I wanted to talk about. The American, because the American is a fun league to watch every year. I don't know if you know much about it. You should, because Cincinnati was in the playoff a year ago. But the big one in the American on Saturday, UCF at Tulane. Tulane was the highest rated group of 5 team coming in. UCF goes in there and win 38-31. Now Tulane's got a short work week. I'll be calling the game Thursday, SMU at Tulane in New Orleans. But if you look at the standings in the American right now, This is also going to be a fun league to watch at the end because UCF, Cincinnati, Tulane, all at 5-1. And then behind them is SMU at 4-2, along with Houston. And so as we get to this portion of the season, and I had touched on it yesterday during college football final, we're handing out bowl bids, we're handing out conference championship bids, and we're looking at teams that are surprisingly not going to be in a bowl like Texas A&M, which if you'd have given me the odds on that at the beginning of the season, if I went to someone and said, hey, Texas A&M is not going to make a bowl, they'd look at me more than they do and say, dude, go get your head checked. Like, that's impossible. Well, they're 3-7 and they're not getting in. So this is a fun time of year and a sad time of year when we're wrapping up the college football season. I do want to give a cheers because there was two cheers rather. One to Boston College for getting a ranked win, I believe, for the first time since I think it was 24 or 25 tries. Forgive me for not getting that stat right. But they got down and beat NC State with seconds remaining 21-20. Think about that. That is their first win over a top 25 team in 8 years. They do it on the road in what's been an awful season for Boston College and Jeff Hafley. Now 3-7 on the year. So cheers to Boston College for snapping that ranked win losing streak. In the final cheers today, if I had to give a Sunday Bloody Sunday helmet sticker, got the helmets, but the Arizona State helmets who lost to Washington State. That's a whole other story that I don't want to get into because I don't feel like consuming all of this Bloody Mary now. But Vanderbilt, 26 consecutive SEC losses. All they did was beat Kentucky yesterday, snapping that 26-game SEC losing streak. We don't always need to focus on the powers because that's easy to do. Focus on some of these schools that continue to roll the ball out there when they're struggling. And that was Vanderbilt, 26 consecutive losses in conference. Cheers to them for getting the win against Kentucky. That's what makes college football special because we focus too much higher and fire and bowl games and playoff. There are teams that aren't going to go to bowl games, but there are teams that have good stories out there. And those were a couple of them yesterday. I do want to wrap up with this. Ohio State beat Indiana 56-14. We knew that was going to happen. No Travion Henderson yesterday for the Buckeyes, but the story to watch now, Mayan Williams. He went out. Their other talented running back with an injured ankle. Michigan's in 2 weeks. We got to keep an eye on that. But yesterday, in a sport that you know that I love, you know we love here on the ESPN College Football YouTube channel, the epitome of what makes it special, Cameron Babb for Ohio State. Cameron Babb was a highly ranked receiver coming out of high school. He was one of those in the next line of great Ohio State receivers. He's a fifth-year senior. He's had 4 ACL surgeries, 4 of them. And yesterday at the end of the game, Ryan Day drew up a ball play to get Cameron Babb his first collegiate reception. Not only was it just his first collegiate reception, it was a touchdown. And when you saw the Ohio State Buckeyes team run to Babb and celebrate like they just won the Rose Bowl or the college football playoff, it just goes to show you that in this day and age of NIL, transfer portal, me, Babb, a fifth-year senior whose career didn't live up to the expectations of coming out of high school, it just goes to show you how special moments can still be in this sport. He's a team captain. They love him there in Columbus. And that is the ultimate cheers on a Sunday Bloody Sunday. When you see a moment like that, it makes you understand why above everything else, why we love this sport so much, because even in a program like Ohio State, there's still a player who's had to battle adversity and showed what that touchdown meant to him yesterday. So it was just incredible. Look up the clip. It is so much fun to watch. Also, as a quick reminder, as we always do, myself, Paul Feinbaum, will do our Sunday morning recap. We're going to get into Jimbo Fisher and what's going on at Texas A&M, the story of Brian Kelly and how remarkable that's been in year one, and what, to this point, this college football season has lived up to every bit of the hype. So have a great Sunday, everybody. Thank you again for watching Sunday Bloody Sunday. We need to finish what we started. I'm going to give you a pep talk real quick. We've got this Sunday. We've got the following week. We've got 3 Sundays in the regular season, including championship weekend. So if you need to, make the Bloody Mary a little stronger. If your team's out of it, come hang out with me, -2. Misery loves company, and we'll do it together. So as always, we appreciate you watching Sunday Bloody Sunday right here on the ESPN College Football YouTube channel.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.